Khalid Al Mansoor was the billionaire every man envied, and Layla Hassan was the stunning bride every woman admired. But on the very night they were wed in Dubai's most lavish celebration, their fairy tale ended in blood, betrayal, and a secret that would bring an empire crashing down. The city of Dubai shimmered like a jewel on the day of the wedding. It was not just another ceremony. It was an event that captured the attention of the entire region. Guests arrived in fleets of luxury cars, their designer clothes glistening under the golden lights of the Burj Al Arab, where the reception was held. The groom, Khalid Al Mansoor, was one of the most powerful men in the Middle East. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and always carried himself with the kind of authority that came from years of commanding boardrooms and empires built on oil and steel. To his business rivals, he was untouchable. To his admirers, he was the embodiment of success. The bride, Layla Hassan, stood at his side, her beauty radiating brighter than the diamonds sewn into her gown. She came from a modest background, the daughter of a schoolteacher and a nurse, but her elegance gave her the aura of royalty. The marriage was seen as a union of two worlds, wealth and humility, power and grace. Every camera captured their smiles. Every guest whispered about how lucky Layla was to have secured the heart of a billionaire. The wedding itself was a spectacle. A 10-tier cake stood in the center of the ballroom. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, and rare white orchids filled the air with a soft fragrance. Musicians flown in from Europe played classical pieces, while waiters served gold-dusted desserts. Reporters gathered outside the venue, eager to capture the fairy tale for glossy magazines and social media feeds. To the outside world, this was the beginning of a story destined for happiness and luxury. But behind the sparkle of champagne glasses and carefully staged photographs, a silent storm was already brewing, one that would soon turn the dream into a nightmare. Long before the glittering lights of Dubai embraced her as a bride, Layla Hassan lived a quieter life that few knew about. She was raised in a small but respectable home, where her parents valued education above all else. Ambitious and intelligent, she earned a scholarship to study in London, and it was there, far from her family's watchful eyes, that her carefully sheltered world began to change. For the first time, she experienced freedom, the kind that carried both excitement and danger. She met a man during her second year of studies, someone older and worldly, who promised her love and adventure. Their relationship was intoxicating but reckless, a secret she never planned to share with her family back home. The romance ended abruptly, leaving her heart bruised and her reputation vulnerable. She buried the experience, determined to return to Dubai with her dignity intact. But what happened in London followed her in ways she never expected. In a society where a woman's worth was often tied to purity, Layla knew she carried a truth that could shatter her future. To her, it was a chapter she wanted erased, but to others, it would be seen as betrayal and shame. When Khalid Al Mansoor proposed marriage, her world changed again. It was an opportunity to rise above her past, to enter a life of luxury and admiration, and to give her family a future they could never have dreamed of. Yet beneath her radiant smile was fear. She knew Khalid's reputation as a man of tradition and pride, one who valued honor above all else. Layla convinced herself that love and beauty would outweigh the past she hid so carefully. She believed no one would ever know. But secrets, no matter how deeply buried, have a way of returning at the worst possible moment. The celebrations had ended, the music had faded, and the last of the guests had left the ballroom. The newlyweds were escorted to the private suite reserved for them at the top of the hotel, a place designed to symbolize the start of their life together. The suite was a palace in itself, with golden chandeliers, velvet drapes, and windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, giving a breathtaking view of the Arabian Gulf. It should have been the happiest moment of Layla's life, but as the door closed behind them, the atmosphere shifted. The noise of the city was replaced by silence, a silence heavy with unspoken expectations. Layla tried to steady her breathing. Her gown, now loosened from the ceremony, seemed to weigh on her like chains. She told herself that her secret would remain hidden, that no one could possibly know what she had done years ago. Khalid, meanwhile, moved with precision, his every action deliberate, as if the night were not just about love, but about confirming his pride. For him, This was not only a union, but also proof of status, proof that he had secured a bride who embodied tradition and purity. But as the hours passed, his certainty began to crumble. Small details unsettled him, tiny signs that spoke louder than words. To Khalid, these details were not just coincidences, they were betrayals. The image he had constructed in his mind, the perfect bride he had promised his family and the world, was slipping away. His heart turned cold, his mind filling with a storm of humiliation and rage. For Layla, the suite that had been designed as a sanctuary of love became a prison. What she feared most had come to light, and the man she thought she could appease was already transforming into something terrifying. Rage pulsed through Khalid like fire spreading in dry desert winds. To him, the discovery was not a personal disappointment, but an unforgivable insult. He thought of the empire he had built, the image he had cultivated, and the legacy he was determined to protect. In his eyes, Layla had not just deceived him. She had humiliated him before the world, before the traditions his family had lived by for generations. The more he thought about it, the less he saw her as a wife, and the more he saw her as a threat to everything he stood for. Layla sensed the shift in the air. She tried to calm him with quiet gestures, but her silence only enraged him further. The grandeur of the suite, with its silken sheets and golden accents, became the stage for something far darker than the luxury it was meant to represent. The man who had moments ago been the world's most celebrated groom was now consumed with thoughts of vengeance. His fury left no space for reason, no space for forgiveness. In a burst of violence, the night descended into horror. What should have been filled with tenderness and celebration was instead marked by cruelty and despair. Layla's struggles echoed in the suite, but the thick walls kept her final moments hidden from the world outside. By the time the city began to stir with the first light of dawn, her body lay still beneath the same sheets meant to celebrate their union. For Khalid, there was no sorrow. Instead, there was calculation. He paced the suite with cold precision, already planning how to erase what had happened. He knew that wealth could buy silence, and silence could bury the truth. As he looked down at Layla's lifeless form, he felt no remorse, only determination to ensure that no one would ever see him as weak. Morning arrived with golden sunlight spilling through the towering windows, but inside the suite, the atmosphere was heavy and unnatural. Khalid wasted no time in summoning his most trusted staff. He spoke in short, commanding tones, and they obeyed without question. The official story was crafted quickly. Layla had suffered a sudden collapse, a tragic medical episode that ended her life on the night of her wedding. It was clean, believable, and heartbreaking enough to silence most questions before they could even be asked. The body was moved discreetly, wrapped and shielded from the eyes of strangers. Makeup was carefully applied to conceal the bruises that told a different story. By the time officials arrived, everything had been staged. Doctors were persuaded to sign papers confirming natural causes, while hotel employees were reminded of their loyalty and the rewards that loyalty brought. For those who hesitated, Khalid's influence was more than enough to instill fear. News spread quickly across Dubai. Headlines mourned the shocking tragedy of a young bride gone too soon. Social media overflowed with sorrowful messages, praising Khalid for his composure in the face of heartbreak. Layla's family, devastated beyond words, found themselves trapped between grief and silence. They knew something was wrong, but were smothered by Khalid's power. Invitations to speak out were met with quiet threats, subtle reminders of how easily their lives could be ruined if they challenged him. Still, beneath the surface, cracks began to appear. Staff members whispered among themselves about the noises they had heard, the muffled cries in the night, and the hurried footsteps that followed. Investigators, though pressured to accept the official version, noticed inconsistencies in the timeline and details that could not be explained away. Behind the flawless facade of wealth and tragedy, the truth had begun to claw its way to the surface. The carefully built cover-up began to unravel when a small piece of overlooked evidence emerged. Among Layla's belongings, tucked away in her luggage, was a leather-bound diary. At first, it appeared to be nothing more than a young woman's private reflections, but within its pages lay a record of her deepest fears. She had written about Khalid's obsession with purity, his reputation for ruthlessness, and her constant anxiety that he would discover her past. More importantly, The diary named the man she had once loved in London, providing investigators with a lead that tied directly to her secret. When the diary was uncovered, the whispers that had circled in private became louder. Investigators pieced together a picture that clashed violently with Khalid's official story. The makeup covering bruises, the muffled sounds reported by staff, and now Layla's own words, all pointed toward foul play. Slowly, the press caught wind of the inconsistencies. Stories began to circulate, first in hushed tones, then in bold headlines. The once adored billionaire was suddenly painted not as a grieving husband, but as a predator hiding behind wealth and influence. Public outrage exploded. Layla's family, silenced for so long, found the strength to demand justice. Social media turned against Khalid, and international news outlets joined the chorus of condemnation. His business partners distanced themselves, investors withdrew, and the empire he had built on pride and intimidation began to collapse. In desperation, Khalid attempted to flee, using his fortune to secure passage out of the country. But the net had already tightened around him. He was arrested before he could escape, his downfall broadcast across the world. The man once celebrated for his power was reduced to a prisoner, stripped of control. In the end, it was not his rivals or enemies who destroyed him, but the truth he tried so desperately to bury.